Zeno of Citium, the Stoic who taught the world to breathe. A languid and loving look at the philosopher who taught us all to calm down a bit. Let us set the stage, if we may, for a little excursion into the honeyed antiquity of Greece. Not the golden days of Pericles, mind you, when the Parthenon gleamed like Olympus itself, and Sophocles was scribbling away at tragedies that still leave us gasping. No, we shall pick a time just after Athens had lost her empire, and perhaps, some would say inevitably, her innocence. It is the late 4th century BCE. Alexander the Great, that young thunderbolt of ambition and brutality, has come and gone, leaving behind a world sliced up like an overripe fig among his squabbling generals. Athens, for her part, remains a cultural and philosophical powerhouse, if no longer a political one. Think of it like a faded Oxford, still crammed with clever people, still capable of brilliance, but slightly threadbare around the edges. And into this peculiar world strolls, or perhaps limps, a Phoenician merchant, sun-beaten and shipwrecked, with nothing in his pockets but a mind full of questions. His name is Zeno, and he hails from Citium, a Greek-speaking city on the island of Cyprus. The Phoenicians, you see, were a seafaring, Semitic people, brilliant traders, inventors of an alphabet, and utterly unbothered by the fact that they were constantly being conquered by one empire or another. It made them tough, resourceful, and prone to a certain worldly detachment. One suspects Zeno had a bit of that himself. He was no privileged scion of Athenian nobility. His father was probably a dye merchant, dealing in Tyrian purple, a color extracted from sea snails with such effort that it was worth its weight in gold. As the story goes, Zeno was on just such a mercantile voyage when fate decided it had other plans. His ship sank, or so he said, and he found himself in Athens, broke but unbowed. Now Athens had many things, but pity for foreigners was not especially high on the list. Zeno, it seems, did what many of us might do when stranded in an unfamiliar city. He wandered into a bookshop. It was there he encountered a copy of Xenophon's Memorabilia, a charming record of the conversations of Socrates, that mischievous gadfly of Athens. Reading the words of a man who had lived and died for virtue, Zeno was enraptured. He turned to the bookseller and asked, "Where can I find a man like that?" And as if the gods were directing a particularly on-the-nose stage play, the philosopher Crates just happened to be strolling past. Crates, a cynic, was the sort of man who might appear mad if he weren't so absolutely certain of his own sanity. He dressed in rags, lived without possessions, and once famously walked into a banquet chewing raw onions. This was philosophy as performance art, and Zeno, who would never embrace quite the same theatricality, became his student. Zeno the student, a smorgasbord of wisdom. Zeno did not study with Crates alone. He became a kind of intellectual magpie, flitting from school to school, plucking insights from various thinkers and weaving them together into a coherent whole. He learned dialectic from the Megarians, devotees of logic and contradiction, ethics from the cynics, and physics from the academics, descendants of Plato's own school. He studied for 20 years. 20 years. That's not so much an education as a philosophical fermentation. By the time he began teaching his own philosophy, Zeno had come to believe that no single school had captured the full truth, but that each held a sliver of it. His innovation then was not merely to invent a new philosophy, but to synthesize the best of what had come before into a framework so sturdy, so elegant, that it would shape Western thought for centuries. The Stoa Poikile. Philosophy goes public. Zeno did not found a formal academy with marble steps and gold-flecked columns. He didn't have a dusty hilltop estate like Aristotle or a sacred grove like Plato. Instead, he chose to teach in the Stoa Poikile, the painted porch, a long colonnade in the bustling Agora of Athens, adorned with frescoes of historical battles and open to anyone who wished to listen. There's something charmingly democratic about this. Philosophy for Zeno wasn't meant for cloistered scholars and wealthy patrons. It was for everyone, for the soldier, the shopkeeper, the slave, anyone who wished to live better, more rational lives. Hence the name Stoicism, from the Stoa, a reminder that great ideas can begin not in ivory towers, but in public squares, between the smell of olive oil and fish guts. The teachings, serenity through strength. Now to the heart of it. What did Zeno teach, and why should we care? Stoicism is often caricatured as a stiff upper-lip philosophy, a kind of emotional repression in sandals. But this does it a disservice. Zeno's philosophy was not about suppressing feeling. It was about understanding what matters. The Stoics divide the world into two categories. 1. Things within our control, our thoughts, our actions, our choices. 2. Things outside our control, everything else. The weather, the stock market, other people's opinions, the mortality of loved ones. Once you accept this distinction, life becomes startlingly clearer. Why, Zeno asked, should we torture ourselves over things we cannot change? Instead, let us focus on cultivating our character, our reason, our virtue. These, and only these, are truly ours. Virtue for Zeno was the only true good. Not riches, not pleasure, not fame, but the consistent, rational pursuit of excellence, arete. This was not the virtue of smug piety, but the robust strength of a mind that knows itself and acts justly. And emotions? Zeno didn't hate them. He simply saw that many of them, rage, envy, lust, were the result of faulty reasoning. We grieve because we assume loss is bad. We envy because we think someone else's good fortune diminishes our own. Clear the fog, said Zeno, and you'll find a deep calm beneath. Zeno the man, a life in tune. Zeno practiced what he preached. He lived simply, dressed modestly, and accepted hardship with equanimity. He turned down royal gifts and high offices. When insulted, he did not retaliate. He was, by all accounts, gentle, dryly humorous, and rather serious, less a dazzling orator than a steady fire. Cicero later called him more austere than agreeable, which one suspects is how most Stoics would like to be remembered. His death, like his life, came without drama. He supposedly tripped, broke a toe, and declared that he had lived enough. Why then, he is said to have asked the gods, am I still here? And with that, he quietly took his leave. Legacy, the quiet flame that endured. Though most of Zeno's own writings are lost, vanished into the winds of history like so much papyrus ash, his philosophy endured. Cleanthes, his devoted student, kept the flame alive. And Chrysippus, a dazzling logician and writer, systematized Stoicism into a rigorous school of thought. In the centuries that followed, Stoicism would become the chosen philosophy of emperors, Marcus Aurelius, slaves, Epictetus, and statesmen, Seneca. It would influence Christian monasticism, Enlightenment rationalism, and even modern therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy owes much to the Stoic idea that thoughts shape feelings. Today, in a world addicted to dopamine, outrage, and hyperbole, Zeno's calm voice feels like a balm. He whispers not of detachment, but of discernment, not apathy, but agency. That no matter the chaos of the world, we still possess the most precious freedom, the ability to choose our response. Final thoughts. A portrait in stillness. Zeno of Citium never conquered a kingdom. He didn't write epic poetry, led armies, or seduce queens, but he did something far rarer. He showed humanity how to suffer well, to endure nobly, and to live meaningfully, even when everything else is lost at sea. So the next time your world goes slightly sideways, your phone dies mid-meeting, the dog eats your manuscript, the universe does that annoying thing it does, pause, take a breath, channel your inner Zeno, and smile, ever so slightly, at the impermanence of it all.